What's up, everybody? Michael Johnson here with the Business Choreography Podcast. I'm excited you joined me today because today we have a very special guest. Today we have Andrew Howlett, and he is the CEO of Struck, an agency that excels in transforming brands in the destination marketing, outdoor recreation, and biotech industries, strategically boosting brand awareness, engagement, and growth with expertise in rebranding, repositioning, and preparing for fundraising. Struck is at the forefront of brand transformation. We are so excited to have Andrew here with us today, and I can't wait for him to share his story and share with you his expertise. So let's cue the intro and we'll jump right in. Listen, there's a lot to learn when growing and scaling your business.
That's why we created the Business Choreography Podcast, where we talk about choreographing your marketing, operations, and sales into dynamic systems that increase your revenue and your impact.
We'll explore solid business principles and discuss all things that make businesses dance to success with clarity.
We'll help you figure out where the holes are in your business and what you can do to fix them. Think of us as your official business choreographers, aka your insider growth strategists.
Remember, your choreography matters. Welcome to the Business Choreography Podcast. Andrew, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Great to be here. Thanks, Michael.
It's so funny. We jumped on ahead of time and found out that we actually live in the same exact state. In fact, we live across the freeway from each other. We didn't even know it.
I asked what part of the country you're in and said Lehigh, Utah. And I'm like, wait a minute, where? Lehigh? There you go. We're right there, right next door.
It's crazy. Small world. We certainly didn't meet that way, so that's kind of fun. But I'm excited to share with everybody your story, your journey, and your background. Of course, people that listen to the show know that we start with a backstory and we kind of wind our way back to all the cool things that you're doing today. So let's start from the beginning and share with us all the goods, because I'm sure it wasn't a straight line to get to this point in your journey. So let's hear about it. Let's hear the juicy deets.
Yeah, no, it definitely was not a straight line. I came out of college as a finance guy. That's what I wanted to do. And so started my sort of first and second job were in finance. And a problem that I found about 3 years in was I didn't like it. So that's a problem when that's what you want to do with your life and you're not really loving it. But it was a great education. Right. Actually, I would say I appreciate every minute of it and every thing I learned. It was right in sort of late 90s, early 2000s when tech and, .com was really sort of taken over, and it was the emerging thing. And I'm very much a throw me in the deep end kind of guy. So I just said, I want to build a website and try and sell something just to see more about the experience of the website and whatever, not necessarily to sell anything. Through that process, I ended up hiring a couple of developers just to help me build it out and do what I needed to do. And lo and behold, some people said, "Oh, you have developers working for you? Can you, help me out? Can you help me do this and whatever?" Anyway, that's how I started a first agency, Rain, and went on to be really a tech and innovation focused agency. That I'll say I'm very proud of so many of the things we did there, including we were one of the first to be doing really innovative, cool stuff on mobile app development, including pitch detection engine. So we were building apps for Sony Music and Universal Music, and so you could sing along with Kelly Clarkson or with Alicia Keys or there was a whole bunch of those that we did, and it would tell you how good, or in my case, bad you were singing. But it was super complicated tech at that point in time. It was super fun. And then right before I sold the agency in 2018, before that I had offices in New York, Utah, actually Seattle and Nicaragua, of all random places. Yes. The normal places you'd think of. And but right before that, we were doing a lot of work in the voice. So Alexa, Google Assistant, Cortana. We were really the first outside of Amazon to be doing voice work. So we were really leaders there, and that was a lot of fun. Again, very much tech and innovation focused. Sold the business, wasn't totally sure what I wanted to do, but there was, a agency in Utah, Struck, that I was always a huge fan of. I knew their owners. I had been around them for years. We'd actually worked together on some things, and they were just, they're the best creative shop in sort of the Intermountain West, if not sort of, one of the best in the country. And through a series of events, I was able to buy out some of the previous founders and owners, and I took over here in 2019, which was a big shift for me in terms of going from that tech and innovation side to this highly, super creative side. But it was a lot of fun. I'm a big fan of just sort of challenges and problems and helping to solve those, and whether it be tech or creative or whatever that is. And so, that was 2019 and been here since. There's been quite a few things that have happened since I've been here in terms of just some of the repositioning. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that later, but yeah, that's my background, and to get to where I'm at today.
Wow. Huge jump from finance to creative to all the tech, and now into branding, and you're using kind of a combination of all of that in a CEO position. Holy cow, what a journey.
It's been fun. I mean, I'm honestly very, very lucky that I've been able to be involved in all these different things. And, agencies come with their own set of challenges, just like any industry does. But the variety is something that is just incredibly fun when you're in the
Right.
agency world. One day we're working for a bank, the next day we're working for ski resorts, or we're rebranding a ski resort, renaming a ski resort. We have worked for the state of Utah. We did their travel and tourism for 15 years. So all the big taglines about Utah, that's us. We did that work. And so, the variety is really fun. And I'm very lucky that I've been able to do that. And on the tech and innovation side, we were able to do some things for really incredible work for huge brands and international brands. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm very lucky to get to do that.
I think that's such a fun direction to go. Let's talk a little bit about the power of brand transformation. I think this is maybe under looked at and maybe misunderstood. So let's talk a little bit
Yes.
about that idea of brand transformation, because obviously there's an assumption there that you have a brand that you've established and now you're trying to transform it into something more. So dig into that for us.
Yeah, so I'll take just a quick step back and talk about business transformation's been around forever, right? Business transformation, probably from the first person who grew a little more crops and figured out they could sell it to the cave next door. That was probably the first business transformation that happened, and that's been around for a lot of time. That's your McKinsey's, that's your Deloitte's, that's your big sort of management consultant firms, and they're great at what they do and amazing, very necessary. You come to the 90s and the 2000s, that's when digital transformation came about. And really, it was the Wild West when it came to developing your own websites and your own tech and your own content management system. Everybody was doing their own thing. And then somebody, and very smart people, said, we can package this up and sell it to lots of people in this industry. And hence the rise of software as a service, SaaS, came about. And so that's really kicked off the big digital transformation piece. And that's really that piece that helps people to connect, digitally, web, mobile. It could be in person, in branch, if it's a bank or a credit union, all those different factors. What came out of that is we got a lot of sea of same. People that, if you license the same tech, oftentimes they have a framework. It kind of looks the same. It feels the same. So it's harder and harder and harder to differentiate. And that's where then sort of the experience or the brand piece comes in. And that's where we really we talk about that you have to have that business transformation piece. You have to be always thinking about that. You have to always be thinking about the digital transformation, but you have to think about your experience, because that's the tip of the iceberg that you see. That's the part that the customer interacts with. And, brand, really, when people ask what is a brand is every interaction you have with it digitally, physically, interpersonally. That's what a brand really is. And so when you're talking about a brand, a lot of people think it's a logo, or it's a brand mark, or it's a campaign or slogan. No, it's really every interaction that people have. And in those interactions, a strong story or a strong a piece of creative, whatever that is, drives an emotion drives action is different. Whatever action that our clients want to have happen is very different, but that could be a click, a like, a visit, a purchase, a share, whatever that is. But that comes back to an emotion doesn't come from really killer back-end software that you look at the code and you're like, oh man, this is the most amazing thing. Not to downplay that. It's incredibly important, obviously, right, but they have to play in tandem. And so, as the world continues to progress, Struck believes and understands that the experience needs to constantly be transforming. We need to constantly be thinking about the experience that we're providing for our client, for our customers, for their customers, and we are helping our clients to think about that and come forward with something that is unique, is different, helps them stand apart than their competitors.
Right. I love that. I want to dig in a little bit to the part where you talked about differentiation and the challenge of that. I mean, there's, some people will argue that there's nothing really new still a lot of people selling it a lot of different ways. I don't know if that's 100% true, but the truth of the matter is that we do need to understand and figure out the differentiation that we have in our own businesses. How do you help people do that? I mean, it seems like it's a challenging topic to find the differentiating factors on even products and maybe even services that are the same.
Yeah, and so that's where, again, it's very easy to sort of model your business off of other people's business. You can find the same supply chains, you can license the same tech. So it oftentimes comes down to what is that differentiating feel? What is that differentiating, factor that really comes down to how can we create an emotion? Certainly there's an aspect of it's been done. There's not a new thing. It's not, no art is new type feeling. Then why do we go to movies? Why do we go to a new movie? Okay, it might be sort of a similar Romeo and Juliet story, but it's told in a different way. It's told in a way that's unique and interesting and gets you, pulls you in. And not to say that there aren't brand new ideas, because I truly believe that there are, but we have to find ways to really tell their story that is unique. That comes back to, we start with every client when they're really leaning in. We start with stakeholder interviews. We start with some research. We dig into understanding, who they believe they are. We talk to their customers. Who do they believe they are? We try to understand what is it actually, what bubbles up to the top of the things that people say, oh, we actually really like them for this. More often than not, our clients don't know that. They think their strength is something completely different than what we find from their customers or even from their employees. And we'll talk to some employees and they'll tell us something completely different than what we're hearing from managers of the business. And it's the whole forest and the trees thing. Sometimes we just get so consumed with where we're at or in that track that we kind of forget about those pieces. So we start there and we try to find some really key insights. And anybody who's looking to do this, and this is something that look, it's great if you hire an agency or you hire an outside person to come in, but it's important to listen to your customers, to talk to them, to ask them, and don't go in with sort of this confirmation bias or this preconceived, here's where you're going to be. Listen to them and really understand what they're saying, because that'll help you to find those nuggets, find those things that are resonating. And sometimes you can amplify that. And that's oftentimes then what we do is we find a way to tell that story. We find a way to do it in a unique way, oftentimes a beautiful way, or can be funny or serious, whatever that is. We find a way to tell that and lean into that, and then ideally expand on that, and get people interested first of all, and then how do we then help them get down sort of that funnel interest then into actual intent, and then ideally conversion.
Right. How does a company know that it's probably time for a brand transformation to happen? Like, how can they look at it? You said, sometimes it's being able to see the forest or the trees through the forest, and sometimes you can't because you're so in your own mix. So how would one of our listeners that's an owner look at their business and go, yeah, you know what, we need to start working on that?
Most of the time what we find is people have sort of key inflection points that they find themselves at. They find themselves at sort of a crossroads of some sort. It might be, they need to grow bigger. We had a very large regional bank come to us, and they were associated with one specific town name. But they'd grown to be, actually, they were in, I think, 2 or 3 states at the time. They were the 3rd largest SBA bank in Utah, SBA, I think, or in this region. Anyway, they recognized that if they were going to continue to grow, they had to change their name. They had to get a new brand. They had to have something that connected, because when you look at it from the outside, you thought, oh, here's a little hometown bank. Can they really provide the service that I need? And so,
right.
That was an inflection point. That was a point of a crossroads that they needed. So I think most people will know when, maybe they want to go acquire somebody. Maybe they need to go do some fundraising. We do a lot of work in the biotech space, a lot of work. We've done probably, 3 or 4 dozen different sort of brand plus website plus naming, different work for biotech. And oftentimes they're coming to us because they raised a Series A and a Series B, and they're going to go public, or they need to raise a Series C, but it's a much bigger number. And now they need to actually sort of dress the role. If you're going after that kind of thing, you need to look the part. And so that's an inflection point that they're at. And most people, when they're really looking at their business, and they'll recognize that maybe they've stalled. Their business is sort of stalled. They're not growing, but maybe they're not shrinking. Well, that's a point where they have to take a look and say, what is that? The point too on the digital or the business digital and experience transformation pieces, and I have an arrow that goes all around. You should constantly be looking at it. You need to be constantly looking at these three. Sometimes you're going to over-index on the digital transformation because you need it. You have some systems or tools, and you're going to spend a majority of your budget that 1 year on some new integrations or some products that are going to help you do your business better. Okay, that's totally understandable, and sometimes that happens. But you need to be constantly thinking about it, because the minute you sit back and just say, okay, good, I got it. We've solved it. Well, we've seen way too many, and there's all of the stale examples that we've heard a million times of businesses that did that, and then they're no longer around because they thought, oh, we got it, we solved it, we're the biggest, we're the baddest, we're the best, and then somebody comes along, copies what they're doing, and then improves on it, and next thing you know, they're gone.
Right. What are some KPIs for knowing that the branding and the transformation that you've done are working? I know traditionally, you've got branding that is done by the major corporations in the world, and they have traditionally, balked at maybe direct marketing KPIs. Now, the bigger companies are starting to look at those direct marketing processes and implement them into their businesses. In addition, they're not stopping their branding. They're just implementing these others. So what kind of KPIs can you look at to know that your branding is doing better than where you were at before?
It's a great question. And this is something that we actually lead almost every first phone call we have with a client or potential client is, how are we going to measure success? And sometimes we'll use hey, we're grabbing breakfast 3 years from now, and everything has gone really well. Let's talk about it. What happened? What did we do? What was accomplished, and why are we counting it as a success? To try and understand what is it that they want, what is it they need to do. Look, ultimately, it's going to come back to dollars at some point in time. But sometimes, we have people who they need to up their brand impression. They need to up their brand value. And so, a new brand, a new name sometimes. We were tasked a couple of years ago, we even came into this year with renaming Squaw Valley. Squaw Valley in California, incredible ski resort, had an Olympics there. But as time has gone on, that name has become more and more sensitive to particularly the Native American cultures, and so we had to find a new name and a new brand for them. And in sitting down with the stakeholders, we had the Native American community that wanted to have input. We had the owners, of course, of the resort. We had the local community. We had the business owners. We had to listen to everybody. But in that case, they didn't have a specific KPI that was, we need this many dollars. What they had was, we need to have a level of backing from the communities that are part of there at a sort of, 80, 90% type level. We need to find something, it was a huge task. We spent probably 6 or 9 months just working with those groups to try and find something that would bring them all together. And look, it went incredibly well. We beat every sort of, number that they had given to us. Palisades Tahoe is the name, and the new brand it's incredible. So it went really well, but that's a case of, it wasn't tied to dollars. They had a different sort of KPI, but certainly dollars is, oftentimes we need to move the needle from here to here, or it might be, inbound, inbound leads. They want to get increase their inbound leads. So we look at that. But again, ultimately that will translate, because then at that point in time, they take it over. If it's an inbound lead, they'll take it over, and they now have to trust their sort of engine of taking it to the bottom of the funnel, that they know if they can get those new inbound leads. So those are more the more often than not, factors. But then we review with clients, that bank that I was talking about every year, we do a big review of what's your next year's goals. And, then we map our creative efforts and campaign work against that. And then we measure it every single quarter. We meet and say, how we tracking, how we doing? And, then we tweak and adjust. So, again, it really is meant to be a living, breathing thing, not just a one-off. But in some cases, we just are meant to do that.
Right. So you lived through the joining in 2019, right before the pandemic, and you jumped into a new project. And I'd love to hear more about the challenges of that time compared to how things have changed now for you guys, and what you're having to do differently now comparatively. I mean, you got in right in the heart of the storm.
Yeah, I did. Well, right before the storm hit, I joined,
That's
and
right. It's like,
I
hey,
got
everything's going to
to.
be great. Oh no, everything's not great.
Yeah, you know what? It was certainly one of those moments where all the initiatives, all the things that I had sort of joined and was kicking off, March of 2020 hit, and it was a circle the wagons moment.
Sure.
And I think I know my finance background has actually served me quite well in my career in this space, because a lot of my colleagues and friends in the space, they started as a creative director, and nothing against them. It's just that's their background was sort of, they started there, and they don't always tie into the pieces that are the finance piece of the business. We got to still run a successful and smart business.
Right.
And so we reacted quickly. I'd say we moved much faster than a lot of our peers in terms of just battening down the hatches and doing what we needed to do. Interestingly, for most of our industry, 2020 and 2021 were really great years, because people were having to hurry and scramble to get their online presence figured out, which of course included creative, it included campaigns. So it ended up being a positive for us.
Right.
At the beginning of 2022, we had the war in Ukraine hit, which kicked off this sort of era of uncertainty. And uncertainty for our industry, particularly for creative, is not good for agencies. It's not good, because uncertainty is like, I don't know if we want to pull the trigger on this new campaign or this brand refresh. We're going to reuse some things that we've had, for a while. And they don't want to spend, right? And so the last year and a half have been a lot more challenging, to be honest. And that's even after the comeback to office. That's even we're a hybrid environment, but it has been much more challenging. I'll use this example just because I think it is relevant. You'll understand. I've been doing this for 25, 23, 24 years now, in this industry. Every time there's a new president of the opposite party, doesn't matter which party, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. If there's a switch of sort of administration that way, we would always see about 3, maybe even 4 months of just people holding off on signing new contracts. It was uncertainty. People were trying to figure out, what do we got? What's going to be their thing that they're going to lean into? Where are they going? What levers are they going to push that wasn't there before? And how am I going to need to react to that? And then usually by then everybody would understand, okay, this is what we've got, and we can go back to spending. But you look at, war in Ukraine, which then kicked off some of the inflationary issues. You had inflation, you had, particularly inflation, you had interest rates, starting to climb pretty dramatically. It's just been this uncertainty after uncertainty. Just yesterday, I believe the Fed said we think we're done raising rates. In fact, we might even be able to start, lowering next year. And I believe that's one of those now. Okay, we're fairly certain. It doesn't actually matter what the rate is. It's just now we have a little more certainty around what that is, or what it's, what it is and what it isn't. And so I think that's just an example of now some certainty is coming there. And, geopolitical stuff is always going to be an issue. But right now there's been a little more of that than is normal. So anyway, that was a long way of saying we continue to be in this uncertain time. And just earlier today, I was reviewing some stats from the industry at large, and I mean, everybody's felt it. There's hardly anybody who hasn't had to, reduce staff size a bit, or, has had to adjust their forecasts. But everybody seems to be a little bit optimistic about what next year is going to be. And the difference too, between like 2008, the financial crisis in 2008 to now, is people didn't have cash back then. It really, was kind of across the spectrum. So when they started to feel like they could spend again, what they had to do is spend a little to make a little more, to spend a little more to make a little more. Right now, by and large, companies are sitting on piles of cash. So when they decide to turn on the faucet and start spending again, they have that capacity to do it. So the hope is that it'll be a much quicker sort of exit from this period of slowing to that.
I love that. And I appreciate you sharing that with us, because I feel like sometimes it's easy to feel like you're in a vacuum. And I know that a lot of listeners out there, it's like, is anybody else going through this too? Totally. And it's hard to believe the news anymore. It's hard to believe social media. So I think it's really great to be able to hear other owners and other businesses that are going through some of the similar trends and things that are happening in the world. I want to dig back into more of the branding, the creative. One of the things you said earlier that was really that I really love and that stood out to me was that story drives emotion and emotion drives action.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this is a tried and true concept, and yet seems to be very difficult for so many businesses because they think of their thing so non-emotional. And then if you tell them they have to incorporate emotion, they go, it's kind of froofy and airy fairy. And it's like, well, actually it's not. It's human nature. So let's talk a little bit about driving emotion that drives action.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're exactly right. Emotion and creative just by and large has always been looked at as like, well, that's just art. How do you quantify art? How do you quantify creative elements? And, that's a challenge. Of course, it always is, because it's so much easier just to track, okay, I spent $100 on ad spend on Google and it, converted to X. The interesting thing is most people, when they will invest, maybe a little more in new creative or better creative or more targeted creative, that $100 goes a heck of a lot further, or it'll outperform. But what happens is people just kind of dig in and say, well, I know that if I spend $100, I'll make $105. So I'll just keep doing that forever instead of spending $100 and making $300. But which is actually then truly actually quantifying creative at that point in time. But you don't want to sort of look at that. There's an interesting, and you know what, I'll email it to you afterwards, because it's one of the more interesting things I've ever seen. But McKinsey came out with a report a couple of years ago that they'd spent the better part of, I want to say it was like 5 or 7 years on measuring creative and design. And they named it the McKinsey Design Index. And and this is McKinsey. They don't do anything where they can't put their name behind it. And they tracked essentially the value of creative and of design. And they unequivocally, without any reservation, said design makes for more successful businesses. And they tracked it. They linked it. It's really, really incredible. I mean, it really was. And but it was one of those first moments where a really reputable big company said, hey, design actually is and does drive, better business. So, as we look at it, again, it's trying to understand what are the emotions that each individual needs. I'll take a good example. Snowbird was one of our clients for a lot of years. One of our creative directors was looking online one time and was reading these Google reviews or other reviews, and he saw all these 1-star reviews. And what in the world? These were real reviews, by the way. This was not made up. None of this was planted. Too much snow. Snow was too deep. Couldn't ski at all or snowboard at all in one day. I mean, these are real reviews. People complaining. Well, we went to a client that honestly, and huge kudos to them, because it was a risky thing, where we said, we want to lean into that 1-star review. We want to lean into this sort of, hey, you know what? We aren't your grandpa's ski resort. You want steep and deep? Here it is. And so we're going to say we are the 1-star resort for these reasons. And again, kudos to them. They bought off on it because it felt risky, to them at the time. And it became arguably the #1 campaign of a ski resort, certainly in Utah, if not maybe the world ever. I mean, every award was won. And what it drove this emotion of, yeah, I'm not a, other insert name of another ski resort skier. I'm a snowbird skier. I'm a snowbird snowboarder, because I'm steep and deep. I'm sort of that 1-star. I'm that edgier person. Because every other, if you looked at all the ski resorts and snowboard resorts marketing, it was a family all coming down the hill together, whatever. And so to stand out, and that was really tough. We created an emotion of, I'm not that. I'm this. And I mean, it played out so beautifully. You'll now drive around Utah and outside of Utah, and you'll see people who have even made their own 1-star stickers, and they're on backs of cars. Jackets were made for their personnel. Even staff loved it, because it was like, I'm not your regular resort. I'm a snowboard 1-star, type thing. Like, we're not judged by the same standards of everybody else. But that's an example of creating emotion. And again, from a metrics perspective, from a dollars and cents, we tracked it. It blew the doors off of that, and really changed their business sort of forever.
I love it. That is great. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come and share with us your expertise in the industry. I'd love for you to share a little bit about how somebody listening could get in and check out your company and check out what they could do with you guys. So can you lead us down that path?
Yeah, you bet. Our website's probably the easiest, struck.com, real easy to remember. We actually have a sort of a sister company, which is structure.com, but it's spelled a little different, STRKTR, which is our physical space work that we do a lot of work of. So we're not interior designers, we're not architects. We sort of create experiences for spaces. Those are probably the two easiest, to find us at and reach out. We're also, LinkedIn, all the other places, but those are probably the easiest to find us.
I love it. That's great. Well, we sure appreciate you taking the time to come and share with us your journey and your expertise. And guys, all of you guys listening, go check out Andrew and Struck and see what they can do to help you. And of course, we're neighbors, so hopefully we'll see you soon.
I was going to say, we'll have to get together in real life here sometime soon.
I know, the whole real life thing. That's kind of funny.
Yeah. Very novel these days, it feels. Yeah.
I know. All right, guys. Well,
appreciate it and appreciate the time and appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and your listeners.
Absolutely. Until next time, guys, keep choreographing your business, all parts, your branding included. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Take care.
Thanks for joining us today.
Want more business choreography?
Check out our website at bizchoreo.com to find out more.
And find out how the choreography for your marketing, operations, and sales can raise your revenue and create more impact.
Remember, every business needs choreography.